Welcome, everyone. My name is Jeff St. Laurent. And what's really cool about today is, as you can see, I have a fantastic guest waiting in the bullpen. So let's get to her very soon. But first, I do record all of my live shows. I put them in my university at sellingcoaching.com. I help coaches transition to a full-time business, just like this woman right here, where we're going to hear the journey up to date. So check that out. I have a lot of great resources in my university. And if you want to start right on the homepage of sellingcoaching.com, you can enter your name and email, not only to get a great resource, which is called Launching Your Full-Time Business, the first 3 vital steps. They'll also put you in my community so we can stay connected and you can benefit from when I do great things like this. So without any further ado, my great mentor coaching client, Lynn Mulholland, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Good to be here.
And as I said before, and before we went live, I'm like, I've been hunting her down since it's probably been well over a year because we did our group. I looked at January of last year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been, let's just say closing in on 2 years.
Yeah.
Since we began. And let's start off there because we got to dive right into this. So you came to me, joined my program. Give us, everyone watching, a snapshot of kind of like where are you at with your business in the beginning?
In the beginning, like when you and I started?
When we started off from day one.
Oh gosh, well, when we started, I had just graduated from the IPAC program and I did not know how to start a business. I had my certification and was looking for what is my business model? How do I start a business? And yeah, had no clients, had just gotten myself certified and dove in, I guess, gosh, within the first month, Jeff, when you started really, talking with us about the importance of figuring out, niching, business model, all of that. But I started at 0.
Yeah.
But pretty quickly, you helped me hone in on what kind of, I guess, the financials in terms of starting with a goal, knowing like, what are you shooting for? And helping me think about how to tap into my existing network. So that was a little bit of where I started from absolutely nothing.
Yeah. You start from scratch.
I did.
And as I said in this, I said, of anyone I've ever worked with, and I told you this the first time today, but I'm like, you were the one that got the most clients in the first month of our work than any other student I've ever worked with. And I've had some people do some bunch. Like you literally went from 0 to 5 figures plus in your first month, right?
Yes. But I mean, that was the power of you again, drilling into my head, at least, don't be afraid to tap into your network. Don't be afraid to tap into who you know and to make the ask and to be very clear about the ask, to let them know what you're offering and to not be afraid to talk about, to really talk about a package and your fee. And to be very clear about this is what I can do and this is what it costs. And I've just never really looked back from that. I mean, I actually just had a call this morning with someone who was referred to me. And within the first 5 minutes, I talked about here's what I can do, here's what we can do together, and here's what it's going to cost. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think the other thing that you taught me was don't be apologetic. And that has served me well.
Yeah, because I remember like also with your pricing too, right? Like every conversation, every client you got, I'm like, okay, now raise your price a little bit. Right? Like, remember? And you're like, what? Like, yes, just go ahead. But you did it. You listened.
Yeah. And again, and to not be apologetic about it. And to realize that people will value you as much as you value yourself. And I think that has been something that has stuck with me in terms of realizing as I am looking at the success that my clients are seeing, and I'm looking and I'm hearing, especially the person who was referred to me today, when he shared that the person who referred him has quadrupled his business. And for him to realize that I helped coach someone who has grown their business so dramatically in 4 months, I think 6 months actually is what I've been working with this other person, to realize that I'm helping grow their business by millions of dollars. So why wouldn't I charge what I believe I am worth? and what I believe what I can offer them is worth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want to say, something you brought up was, because people listening to this, who've started their business, et cetera, they're like, well, I want to do that. I want the same results, right? It's not so much about the results that I want to hone in on, right? Too, like it's fantastic to talk about that, but the reality is what it was. You have a strong network.
Yeah.
You've had a strong network, and it was, how do we tap into that? Not everyone has a network necessarily. Well, everyone has a network, but you
Yes.
had a pretty strong one that we had to figure out. Number one, how do we tap into that? And first give you permission and then open up for you to release in terms of, and once we taught you those things, you went for it.
Well, and I think that it's really important when I talk to even clients today who don't keep their networks warm, and just reinforcing the importance of, you you have a network, stay in touch with them. And I think that that was something huge that you taught us in terms of like my newsletter. That's my newsletter is part of how I keep my network warm. I stay in front of my network. I had a corporate network. I had left a corporate job and I had not kept that network warm. The first time that they heard from me again in probably a year and a half was my first newsletter. And I've just never, I have stuck with something that you drilled into our heads, which was have a regular touch point, some way that you are staying alive in front of your network, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's an email that you send on a regular, but whatever it is. I have just stuck to a discipline of no matter what else I'm doing, I'm very, very, I guess, scheduled in terms of I make sure that I have a newsletter and that it goes out, and just the repetition, staying with your network and realizing that that newsletter gets forwarded and gets forwarded. And I see it because I see more people subscribing to it. And so your network grows, your network grows, your network.
The
And
compound interest.
it absolutely is. And again, and right now it's costing me nothing outside of my time and really being thoughtful about doing it and just staying in front of your network and keeping yourself alive. And again, I think for me, Jeff, it was also realizing that, I had a strong LinkedIn network, and it was figuring out how to leverage LinkedIn in the best way for what I was doing.
Yes. So part of it was for you an organization of your time, because you were like, I remember our calls, like call after call, like, Jeff, and you never were short on ideas, as I would say a lot of entrepreneurs are, right? But it was a matter of like, all right, like you just said, scheduling things, knowing when I should be doing what I should be doing and when I should be doing it.
Yeah. And I think that having a routine, having a schedule, for me, it was a cadence. It was making sure that I knew, like I'll share what I do. I mean, most Tuesdays or Wednesdays, I publish an article on LinkedIn. And on my LinkedIn network, I probably have 3,000 subscribers now just to that LinkedIn article that I write. That article is then the basis of a newsletter that I send at the end of every week. And the newsletter is always themed. And the theme, like right now, the theme for this week is change resistance. And I just published the LinkedIn article today. And there will be a newsletter Thursday or Friday that will also have an Instagram post. It will also have books that I recommend or related articles, related reading. And then I always frame it up with sort of my thoughts around, again, this week, the topic is change resistance. And so every week, and it takes planning and effort. For me, I storyboard out over the weekend before what are the themes that are coming up for my coaching clients, and what are the things that they're struggling with. And in general, that feeds whatever the newsletter for the next week is. And so it's scheduling it out, knowing that on Tuesday, LinkedIn article, by Thursday or Friday, I have, the newsletter that goes out, and then the cycle starts all over every week. And it just fits in. I have a template that I've created, and the template makes it really easy. I can crank out a newsletter in 30 minutes. But it's having that cadence and no matter how busy I am, not backing away from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the consistency of it. And that's where it shows, like now over almost 2 years, even with a strong network that you can leverage in the beginning, at some point, depending on what happens, people can, burn through their network. And if you don't have, relationship building touch points like we're talking about here, it's evidence to the fact that you've done the other work,
Yeah.
because now it's not like it's just like, oh, and then it's just been here, and then just finding the cadence that you can maintain.
And it has been interesting, clients breed clients. Again, I mean, I'll pick on the person I talked to this morning. I did not actively go out recruiting clients. I happen to have a husband and wife team who I am coaching right now, who they happen to be at dinner with some friends. And they talked about this coach that they're working with who has helped their business. And at the end of that dinner, they gave my name to someone who reached out to me on LinkedIn, who I scheduled time with today, who just signed a 2-month coaching package with me. And so that's the power. That's the power of working your network. And it's the power of, again, clients kind of spawn clients.
Yeah. One thing we chatted about too, and I remember in the beginning too, your message, like we thought we knew your message starting off, and it got you out, and it obviously got you results. But then obviously over time, you started to see what felt good or not for you, and that evolved. Talk about, if you will, that evolution of a message, because almost every coach I've ever worked with, including myself, in the beginning, it's just the message, the niche, whatever we want to call that, our story. It's such, oh, who am I going after? How do I find them? What am I saying? And yeah, talk about that evolution over the last couple of years.
Well, there was what I thought I was going to be. My original niche was grief coaching. And, but I have this belief now that your clients find you, and my clients found me, and they found me not through grief coaching. I did start with a client or two that came from more grief, which was more actually change coaching. And the change coaching, which was truly my corporate background, was executive coaching, change management coaching, that I was doing within a corporation. And I had a deep executive coaching and HR background, and those clients found me. And so as much as I thought I was going down a path of being a certain kind of coach. I thought I was going to be a coach that was grief coaching, and I was doing these programs with groups of people. I can tell you with confidence, I'm doing exactly 0 of those now.
Exactly. Precisely.
Yeah. And what I am doing is pretty much, I'd say 99.9% of my coaching is executive coaching. And I have clients who lean into the fact that I have 20 years of corporate background, executive background, coaching background, HR. And I have clients who gravitate that I also am a female who has that background. I have a lot of clients who now, word of mouth, have discovered that I'm also a pretty direct coach. So my style also kind of leads the people who find me. And I'll talk, Jeff, if you want, I can talk a little bit about also like where I'm getting clients.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So now, I mean, because obviously it's a full-time business from the get-go, but what does this now look like? We walk into the world of Lynn and talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so the importance of creating a business model did not dawn on me until the day that I had too much. And I was kind of fielding requests from a lot of different places. And I think had like a story that I shared with you, Jeff, a couple months ago, where like I was invited to speak at a conference that didn't align at all with anything that I was doing, but it just seemed like a great opportunity.
Right.
And it was one of the first times I said no. And what allowed me to say no was, for the first time, I had created a business model. And I'd really gotten firm and direct and clear in my head about what my business model was and what I was coaching, who I was coaching, why I was coaching. And again, this big conference that invited me to come speak, it was to a group that had nothing to do with what my coaching business was about. It would not have been a good use of anyone's time. And so for me, business modeling, I started thinking I was going to hang my own shingle. I was going to, find my own clients, and I was going to run these group grief coaching sessions. It's not what I'm doing. So I actually, a group of other coaches like me who have an executive background, are people I knew from my corporate background, who we all were change certified coaches. We now work together, and we actually do coaching interventions in companies that are going through big reorganizations and mergers and acquisitions. It was just a group of coaches who we found each other. And so that is a facet of my business. It's probably 10%, but it's allowed me to keep a former network alive. It allows me to do work that is bordering a little bit of coaching and consulting. So that's 10% of what I do. 15% of what I do is my private practice. And a lot of it is referral based. Most of my clients are referral based at this point. The other balance of my business comes from a coaching platform. So I actually do work with one of the coaching platforms. They gravitated to my executive background. They gravitated to my corporate background. They deck me against some of their largest corporate clients and some of their big initiatives. You want me to say the name of the company? Is that?
Oh, fine. Yeah.
So I work with Better Up. And so Better Up, they are scaling, and they're scaling big time. They just did a big initiative with the U.S. military to coach around readiness for deployment. And they sent a team of coaches in to work with the Air Force. So I was one of the coaches, which was kind of outside of my niche. I am from a military family. So I was able to kind of work that language. I'm also working with some of the really big financial services companies that are going through some pretty massive reorgs and return to office heartache. I'm also working with some really big Silicon Valley tech startups. But for the most part, Better Up has leaned really heavily into my financial services background, which is where I came from. And so just being very clear that, at some point, I only have 100% of my energy to give. And I also have gotten very clear that 5% of that I also reserve for me. So I have very clear guardrails around. I do have certain days and times at this point that I don't take clients. And it is time that I devote to my administrative stuff, but I also devote to making sure that 5% of every 5 days in my week, 5% is just devoted to family stuff and to me stuff, which has been really important for my mental health.
How have you been able to, as you've grown this, and if anyone's listening to this, I really highlight the, 10% here, 15% here, right? Like, and me hearing this now, back from when we worked together initially, it was like, oh my gosh, like look at where you took all this from our conversations, right? Because that's where in the beginning you didn't have that structure. And I remember you feeling that scatteredness and always trying to feel grounded.
Yeah.
And I know I set some framework up, but the way you've taken it now and made it your own, and so that's number one. I want someone listening to that is like, you figured it out, but it took time.
Yes.
But it's also, I mean, technically from day one, January till now, if we're talking mid-September, right? So what's that? 22 months, 21 months.
But Jeff, you gave so much education about, again, figuring out what was I trying to create? Like, what did I need to financially? What did I need to create? Also, you recognized early on that I came from a very structured corporate background. So you saw immediately that I was used to having days that I started at a certain time of the day. And you, from the start, you told me, like, lean into that. Lean into the fact that you still work a normal, like 7 a.m. to whatever kind of day. And so structure your business accordingly. And so I've done exactly that. It did take some lessons learned for me to realize how many clients per day I can handle. Nothing like having a 9 client day to realize that that's like 4 clients too many, if not
right.
Yeah, I mean, like the end of that day, I was good to no one. And it takes 1 or 2 of those days to realize, like, okay, I can handle only a certain number of clients, and I only have a certain number of days. And then you start to work the math, which was a big piece of what you taught us, was like,
Mm.
you work the numbers, work the math, and then you start to also from there start to work what your fee is, and have a target, know what is your goal of how much you want to make, how much you need to make
Mhm.
financially. And and it feels like a really big formula when you're just talking about it theoretically, but when you're living it, for me, it started to just click, where I
Mm.
realized, again, it took one day where I was like, 9 clients, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Like, nothing, no money makes me any good to any client by the time I get to client number 5. And so it's also, I had to be true to myself in terms of what kind of coach did I want to show up to be with my clients. I also got really clear around, like, I'm no good if I haven't eaten, you know, if I have 5 clients back to back and I didn't take a break, by client number 4, I'm a beast.
Yeah.
And so it was living a little bit of that, when I got clear about, like, okay, so this is how much I can handle, and making the numbers work.
I gotta say it's interesting now as you talk. I'm a little bit emotional because I I'm I'm listening to what you're saying, and we've spent a lot of time together, but also you've evolved afterwards, and the stuff you're sharing, I can relate to because I've gone through stuff in my own practice, and a lot of the stuff you're talking about, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I didn't figure this stuff out in my business, I mean, year 5, 6, something like that, and I get emotional because I'm so like, here you are in month, let's call it 21-ish, right? And I'm like, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because
Exactly.
it didn't have to be year 5 or 6 for you.
Well, and
Like, it's so go ahead.
no, but it's true. I mean, that's you gave I think that your framework gave me the confidence to be able to say, after that 9 client day, I need to go back and rework the numbers. I went back to my notebook from our
Love it.
classes, and I was like, I need to rework my math. There's a better formula here. And 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 I think something else that you taught me, at least, was, it's my business. Like, what I say on day 1, I can change on day 10.
Yeah.
You can change your niche, you can change what you're going after, you can change your model. Um, it's not fixed. You can change it based on what's working. And I remember before I started your program, I had this feeling like I'm going to launch a website, and it's like, and then there's no turning back. Like, whatever I create is like set in stone forever. And you were like, no, it's not. And realizing that, it's our business to evolve.
Yeah, you're the CEO.
Yeah.
And the biggest part is that it's jumping in full on, where in the relationship that we had, with you and I individually, the group, or when I work with someone, it's the fact that it's like, listen, you might not know how to swim right now, but I know how to swim. But I need you to get in the pool, into the ocean, and whatever. And just like, if you trust me, then if you start to drown, I'll just pull you up.
Yeah.
But then I'm not going to hold on to you. And that's what you did. And all these things that you're talking about, we can't figure them out behind the scenes.
Well, and I think that again, that was for anyone who is starting your program, anyone who is in your program or thinking about your program. What you just said is so important. Like, stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the magic, you know, website to develop itself. Stop waiting for a client to knock on your door. I mean, that's when you just kept pushing. You kept pushing for, like, God, just put an advertisement out there. Put something out for a live Facebook Live, just put it out there. Just get a newsletter out there. Maybe no one reads it. Maybe 10 people read it. But just get it out there. And those little pushes were how I got my first client.
Yeah.
And then my second client. And, to the clients who took the chance on me, yay, thank you. But again, if you hadn't pushed, and I will reflect on the one or two people in our program who just kept waiting and waiting and waiting, and then wondered why they didn't have clients, and me realizing, as terrifying as those first 2 or 3 newsletters were, as terrifying as it was to like hit launch on my website, how great it felt when it was out there. And then to realize that, yeah, maybe a few people did read it. And then I was getting an email or I got a phone call. And to just realize that, like, that first Facebook Live, sure, it was clunky and no one watched it, but I could do it. And it was done. And I could do another one. And next time it was going to be even better.
Yeah.
But without doing it, you're not going to learn. And same thing with, again, I wouldn't have known, like, 9 clients is too many in a day. I wouldn't have known it if I hadn't lived it.
Yeah. And you couldn't get there if you didn't do it, because you could never get to 9 clients in a day.
No. Yeah.
I remember I used to pride myself. This actual phone, my landline phone, this literally is 20 years old from day one in my business. This phone has heard more stuff. But I used to like get so excited because I would have like 2 or 3 of these, and I'd be killing phones like left and right. And like, my battery's dead, gotta go to another phone. That's not sustainable,
No.
And but the only way you get to that spot is by, aggressively pursuing. And you aggressively pursued, but you also aggressively pursued and evolved.
Yeah.
Which is why you're still here and you didn't burn out, and you have a very healthy business. It's not just a healthy income. Bigger than that, there's a healthy structure that fits your lifestyle, that's sustainable, that it will evolve over time, but you can now take this as far and as long as you want to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the other piece, is the sustainable piece. The first time I realized it was I needed to create a wait list was kind of a moment for me, because I was skirting on the edge of being able to violate some of my own boundaries, where I suddenly was like, well, maybe I could take a client at 7:00 at night, or maybe I will go ahead and do Saturdays, and that's dangerous thinking.
Yeah.
And realizing and asking myself the question, what am I giving up? And to what end? Like, who is this serving? And a little bit of like self-coaching around, like, what exactly is this accomplishing by me thinking that I can take another client? Is it my ego? Or like, at what point is it enough? And it's still, if someone wants to work with you and they realize that the wait list is, 4 weeks long, they'll wait. And it doesn't, but also having a healthy referral network has been, one of the other lessons learned. Like, don't be afraid to refer clients. Also, don't be afraid to turn clients away. That's a hard one. I mean, saying no to someone who's outside of what your services are, or what you think you could do for someone, knowing that someone's better served with a therapist, knowing that someone's not a great fit is one of the hardest things early on that I had to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
But I'm working with you because I think I had one of these conversations with you where I think I fired a client, and it was me talking where I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I need to make money, but this isn't the right thing. And again, without your support and you really coaching me through that in terms of, but if it's not in line with your business, what is it serving?
It was taking so much away from you to do the other work necessary to go beyond and grow. It was taking up that valuable energy that you have. And
it was killing my confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was an important moment.
Yeah. So now looking forward, because this is the point where too, like, now looking forward, what's on the horizon where now in another year, 2 years, whatever, I get you back on here and say, now here she is 4 years into the business. Where's this trajectory going that you can see at least from this vantage point to get an idea of the future?
Good question. So it is interesting. So again, I'm pretty heavily right now, again, but about 65% of my business is with Better Up. Um, that I will probably back that percentage off over the next few years, as I'm growing more of my being more embedded with a couple of companies. So what I've discovered, and again, this was not part of the initial plan. I like going in and helping with corporate interventions. I like being at the front end of working with companies when they know they have something on the horizon, where they're either like one of the companies. I'm working with a company right now who they brought in a whole new executive team. They decided to replace a former executive team. Massive amount of change for this particular financial services institution. And so it's coaching the executives who survived and coaching the new executives. And it's working with a team of other change coaches. I love that work. And it's not, it's working as a team with the company. It's also working with individuals on individual coaching. It's really, really energizing, fun work that kind of straddles my independent business and I spent 20 plus years in corporate America. So it satisfies both of those needs. I can see me growing more of that kind of work. But I also still, I love my individual clients. My individual clients I give my individual clients a lot more hand-holding than I give my corporate clients. They get more of my time. They get more individualized time. The other piece where I haven't been able to spend as much time and energy as I'd like to is I still aspirationally would love to give at least 5 to 10% of my time to pro bono coaching. And I just haven't been able to do enough of that. And so I'm doing, I'd say right now, maybe 3% of my time is more not free coaching. In particular, I work with folks who are just out of addiction recovery facilities. And I'm not an addiction coach, but I work with people as they're thinking about what are their goals for the life that they are building in recovery. And that is work I like, that I would love to do more of pro bono. So yeah, 4 years from now, I would love to say that that's a good 10 to 15% of my business.
Wow. It's incredible. And I think that's the underlying thing I'm hearing right now for you is like, it's like you're playing, it's just like you have what it looks like now. You don't need to know what it looks like. You have some things. I'd like to do this. I'd like to see this evolve, but it's like you're open to see how it evolves, and you have a command. It's different than control, right? You have a command over your business.
Yeah.
And where you want it to go, and you can start to see how it might morph. And if it does, it does. If it doesn't, that's okay. But it's really going to depend on how you evolve as a human being, as a business owner, a woman, a wife, etc.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's, the world is hungry for coaching. Yeah. They are hungry for coaching. They're not entirely sure what it is. But what I've discovered is that when people feel it, and when they just a hint of it, they want more of it.
Yeah.
And that is, it's kind of a Wild West industry, but the opportunities for, just getting in and helping people realize their goals. And when they see the power of having a coach, and again, just to hear how they talk about it then with their friends, and just to be a part of that is so energizing. I mean, I can't ask, you can't have a better job than what we do.
I agree. I'm with you.
The best.
Lynn, I just want to say thank you for trusting me and doing the work and contributing and being an awesome student. And it's so like, this is why I do what I do for these moments. I mean, there's a whole bunch of moments along the way, but for these moments when I get to reconnect with someone that I've worked with who just is thriving, and it's not even really the income piece, as you know, right? It's, yes, there's a necessity of that component, but when it's not there, sometimes it's like that's all the focus. But as you get going, it's like, that's not, like you said, no amount of money is gonna make me better, and that, any client passed number 5 in a day.
Yeah.
And so to see the joy that it's bringing to your life and the evolution and the things you shared, I just thank you for everything.
Thank you for the tools. I mean, honestly, without what you gave me, the repetition, the patience and the confidence to really to believe in what I'm doing, to believe that it will, and to know it will grow. And again, you gave me the foundations to build that structure, to be able to talk about, hey, I've got 10% here and 70% here. Without your education, I would still, I think I'd be spinning 200 plates and they'd be breaking left and right.
Yeah, I remember the plate metaphor with you a lot.
All the time. There's always plates.
I look forward to the future. Thanks for your time. Thanks everyone who's watching this, and hopefully this has been super helpful for you and how you can apply this to your own. So stay tuned for more stuff in the way, and Lynn, we'll definitely be in touch.
Thank you so much.